Hello, everyone. Welcome to São Paulo as part of the Inspire Workplace Inspirathon. I'm Gustavo. I'll be your host for the next hour. I'm really excited to be here with you today and deliver the local knowledge and help to give you the Inspire Workplaces global community much of needed inspiration, knowledge, and connections to change the world through the world of work and connect you with Inspire Workplaces in 2024 and beyond. This 24-hour digital workplace Inspirathon is being hosted live, but it's also being recorded and will be made available on demand. Please don't forget to ask your questions and share your thoughts in the comment section through the talks. So back where we are right now, here in Latin America, I've got a fantastic lineup of speakers, really excited to bring you. I'm going to be kicking off today and make my talk on employer reputation in Latin America. The idea is not to present you things that are totally new, but the idea on the other hand is to show you some perspectives in terms of what we see here, things that are happening, how can we help you move the needle of our employer reputation in Latin America in a better way. And I'd like to start here by sharing some thoughts about loyalty and reputation. This is one from Howard Schultz, the former CEO and chairman of Starbucks. And he says that if people believe they share values with a company, they stay loyal to the brand. So I guess this is part of what we're trying to achieve today in our sessions is how can we build this loyalty? How can we make sure that people stay engaged and they are focused on the job to be done and focus on the everything that we can apply as great employers and how can we transform the companies that we work for. So giving you a little bit of background so we can get started. So there's I guess the first thing to share with you is that there are two big groups of talent in Latin America. We can see that they are very distinct from each other. So first group that is highly paid, highly qualified professionals, especially in IT, engineering, technical areas, very highly demanded, lots of competition regarding those people. And on the other side of the scope, we see a vast majority of people who are underskilled. They still have not the highest levels of education. Therefore, they are sometimes very low paid. And these two different groups, they conflict with each other, but at the same time, it makes what is so challenging for people managing employer reputation in Latin America to work with, because you have to answer to those two demands. To give you another perspective of how complicated it is, there is a study from the University of St. Gallen. This is a guest study that says that in Latin America, probably we have the highest percentage of university students that are considered starting their own business upon graduation. So 27% of the students in Latin America, they consider opening a business right upon graduation, while 70% in the other parts of the world. So this is also very interesting because in a way it narrows the talent pool, because imagine that 1 in 4 students won't be much likely to find a job, but they will create their own company. So as an additional pressure here on the talent pool. Average unemployment in Brazil is in Latin America, of course, is about 6%, 5.8% to be precise. There is a high percentage of self-employment in Latin America that ranges from 23 to 57% of people in Latin America could be considered as self-employed. So there's another element of pressure here on the talent pool. But on the other hand, we see some other elements here that are interesting as well. So, for example, work tenure in Latin America tend to be on average about 20% lower than Europe. So people tend to stay longer at work in Brazil or in Latin America. And the quality of employment index, it ranges from 0 to 100. So the lower the number, the higher the quality. So we see that 37.6 in Chile, which is comparable to many countries in Europe. To the other extreme was 85.6 in Paraguay, which is super, super low comparable to very underdeveloped economies around the world. So you see pretty much everything here in Latin America, from very demanding, very qualified positions that are competing in the global marketplace with other people around the world from a group of people who are really on a lower demand in terms of the skills that they can provide to the companies. Something that is also interesting regarding Latin America is that there is still some background noise when we look at what CEOs and HRDs are prioritizing on their companies. So giving you a little bit of aspect here that it's based on a survey that has been recently published here in Brazil. So, and if you see talent attraction and training are the top 2 priorities, and we see engagement are the 4th priority if we look from the HRD perspective. But when we look at the CEO perspective, engagement is a little higher. It's probably the 3rd priority in human resources. And this is also something that when we see and we talk to HR executives in Latin America, it's quite common that they tend to prioritize more operational aspects of the job rather than strategical. So this is also a sort of a dilemma, because when we talk about how can we contribute to the company, how can we add value to the company, most of HRs, they are more likely to have a look at more operational stuff rather than more strategic stuff. And this, you see some disalignments here in terms of what CEOs are expecting from HRs and what HRs are expecting. On the other hand, it also tells a little bit of how CEOs are perceiving HRs in a certain way, because from here you can see that there's some sort of disalignment in terms of what are the real expectations on these 2 big players within the organization. So I like to bring this example as also a way to illustrate how can we better position, because if this chart shows anything, is a big opportunity for companies who are focusing on specifically on engagement, on talent, and specifically when we look at reputation. So the question is, why focus on employer reputation? And I guess the first thing is quite obvious to say that, but it's very far something that is not just an HR thing. So when we look at global reputation drivers, especially this study from RepTrack, which I recommend you to have a look. It's a very nice study from Reputation. When we analyze many elements of the components that build together reputation, workplace is one of the consistently performs at the bottom worst together with citizenship and conduct. So it tells a lot that it doesn't matter how good your brand is, doesn't matter how good your products are. If your workplace is also it's not really connected to the quality of everything that you do, people will perceive it in a negative way. So this is something that is really interesting, and it's very well connected to the way that the whole value chain is built. So when we look at this, it'll say, well, we have a nice product, but our workplace is not really consistent, then it's a problem. Considering that the most reputation drivers are product and conduct and citizenship, when we look at the stakeholder economy concept, it's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it. In a way, it also reflects something that we tell about when we're talking about reputation, is that it doesn't matter how good I am, it just matters how good I'm perceived as well. So how can we help our people, how can we help our employees, not only to understand the value proposition or what we do, but also to, in a way, make it more visible to everybody, make it more tangible to everybody. So this is something that is also really important. And in a way, in trying to summarize this quick introduction here, investing in products and innovation and kind of not looking at workplace and governance will most likely make a corporation reputation stall to the short midterm. So it doesn't matter how good your products are. If your workplace is not really well treated and your governance is not, working as the mortar of everything that we do, you're most likely your company is going to fail in the mid-short term. So it's important for us to have this very clear, and this is why it's so important for us to have a look on employer reputation in a consistent base. This is something that we normally bring. This is some elements from the Human Resources Society of Resource Management and LinkedIn. Companies with better employer reputation tend to have better indicators, not only in hiring and retaining. So we have better applicants, we have best cost of per hire, faster hiring time, lower company turnover. And this is something that is also quite interesting. It's not really expensive to do that, because by only retaining one mid-level employee, considering that the cost of employment ranges from 90 to 20% of the annual salary, just retaining one employee may represent probably the investment that you should be doing in some initiative. So it is not a matter of paying off. It does pay off. So it's a matter of why are we doing this the way we should be doing. So this is probably the biggest question I'm asking you over this process. And it's not super complicated. I try to make some, I try to put together this is an analogy that I use. It's obviously a kind of a silly analogy, but it's like something that I use because normally it takes, if you go to an airplane, it doesn't matter which airplane. If you take a smaller propeller airplane from your hometown flight school to a big airplane from a bigger liner or bigger jet airplane, all those airplanes are basically flown using those 6 dials that you see ahead of you. So it doesn't matter how big the plane is. It doesn't matter how fast it flies. You always have the 6 dials on your plane. And what I try to do here with this analogy is the world-class companies, they typically rely on 3 dials to drive engagement, to drive inspiration, to drive commitment. So normally we look at these 3 dials in a ways that they are connected to each other, enabling a cause effect and ROI measurement of all HR initiatives. And typically what we see here is that we see some practice inventory, which is something that, for example, top employers does very well in a way of understanding exactly what are the capabilities of the company and how can we showcase them in a proper way, or how connected they are to the value proposition of the company. Internal climate, which is something that most companies normally do in terms of trying to understand, trying to accessing what are the expectations and needs and preferences of the employees in a very deep way, in a way that they understand exactly what are the components of these elements. And also on the perception side, look at the external rankings, which is some rankings that we normally do, the external rankings in terms of how can we perform in relation to other companies. To name a few, we have Great Places to Work, we can have Inspire Workplaces, we can have other rankings, LinkedIn rankings, for example. But the idea is that it's not about just having one of them. It's about to have those 3 connected the way that we're doing here on this chart, and how can we use them to validate each other. So when I mention here that we should be enabling both cause effect and ROI measurements, you cannot do this by just participating in one ranking, or you cannot do this by just implementing an internal climate survey. You have to combine this. This is probably one of the biggest elements of big data that we see. How can we correlate this information together? How can we start, generating models, pivoting this information, and try to look at this in a way that enables you to see, well, what are the opportunities? How is my capability versus my perception? How am I perceived by other companies? Well, my internal climate might not be that good, but when I look at other companies and we look at through other rankings, I see that my position is not that bad. So these are the elements we think that we should be taking a look at when we're analyzing the employer reputation in a more broad way. So I really encourage you to, as much as possible, not only to focus in one of those 3 elements, but like I said, using the analogy of the airplane, use those elements combined. increase the number of dials, not only 3, 4. So if you're looking at different rankings from different categories, from different inventories, on different climate surveys, pulse surveys, which is something that we see a lot over here. So as many elements as possible will help you to be more precise in navigating the employment reputation. Try to make you more precise in terms of what are the opportunities, what are the must-win battles. So this is part of the strategy that we normally see in companies in Latin America as part of this whole process that we were talking about. Then something that is also interesting is that it's not just about engaging, but also to inspiring. So companies seem to be more inclined in balancing short and long-term goals and objective teams, creating a greater sense of purpose and belonging. This is interesting because until the pandemic, we normally saw that the objectives of a company were too much focused on the short term, too much focus on the job to be done. And over the past 2 or 3 years, what we see is that there's not that they're not focused anymore, they still focus, but they still have now some connection in terms of what is the legacy of the company, what is the purpose of the company. And this balance between something more aspirational, something more long-term, and something more concrete, short-term, is what is driving this engagement. It's something that is connecting people's expectations and people's values to the purpose of the company and to the overall objective of the company. So this is something that we see a lot. Most engagement initiatives tend to fail when people's needs and expectations are neglected by HR and by managers. So we normally see, and this is quite common, that we see many companies presenting their climate survey in a way that they're only focusing on the positive side of things, on the good things, and not necessarily tackling what has to be done. What are the issues? What are the pains of the organization? So whenever we neglect, and normally, especially people, the younger generations, Gen Zs, Gen Ys, they tend to have a very good sense of, well, my needs are not being listened to, my expectations are not taken into consideration, and this is the process that starts situations like we see, and we'll see that in a few moments, the silent quitting. So how can we start having those situations in a more connected to what are the objectives of the company? This is something that we normally ask. If people are one of the biggest recurring investments that companies make, how can HR benefit most from it? So we're investing a lot of money. Money requires, investments require return. So how can we take the best return of the investment that we're doing on people? Stop trying to treat people as resources, because if you treat them as investments, they make a return. And this return can be positive in many aspects. And the same way as engagement, inspiring people is much more of a journey than a final goal. So this is something that I normally tell to the many companies I have been working with in Latin America over the past many years. When you buy a ticket for engagement, you just buy it one way. It's not there's no way back from starting this. Otherwise, your reputation will be ruined forever. So this is something that I normally recommend companies. If you're not ready, start doing something, but not starting and not finishing is much worse than not starting at all. So it's important to start. The time for starting is now. We'll see that in a few more slides, but it's important that it's something they have to do and have to be part of a journey. It's a never-ending process. I like personally this next chart very much because it's from my previous background as a consultant. There is this report from Gallup. I also tend to look at it in a very often way, saying that if you look at this analysis from people who are more and less engaged on the x-axis and the y-axis, see top performance and bottom performance, we normally have these 4 categories of people. engaged and committed, detached and frustrated. And if you look at those guys, if you look at those people, about 70% of the people in LATAM are not engaged. So they are either frustrated, either detached, or uncommitted. While in 77% of the companies globally, this is the number of, so we have a higher group of engaged employees in Latin America than we have in the rest of the world. On the other hand, if you look at, for example, people who are less engaged and bottom performers, for example, the detached, we are the loud quitters, this number tends to be about the same. So the idea here is that we see the engaged people here, frustrated and uncommitted. Probably they are together the silent quitters, and the detached are the ones that we say as the loud quitters. So it's the terminology that Gallup uses for this analysis. And most of the employer reputation initiatives are focused mostly on the engaged ones. So this is something that I always try to bring into context, because normally most of the communication that the companies are doing, most of the initiatives are focused on the engaged and not focused on the other 70% of the company who are either frustrated, detached, or uncommitted. So I guess this is another great opportunity for us to have a look in terms of how we are managing our engagement initiatives in the company, because sometimes we might be showcasing too much what the engaged people are and what they're expecting, and we're turning our backs to the other 70% of the company. So this is an opportunity that we should be looking at, and how can we make sure that this is something that is not about just over engaging the ones that are already engaged, but how can we turn those who are frustrated, detached, and uncommitted into engaged? So this is probably the best opportunity we see right now. So to give you an understanding in terms of what we have as opportunities, what we have as elements, and how can we better evaluate what are the real implications of starting a process of engaging and working in the company and making it more attractive to our people. Something that I normally tell everybody, so the best time for a company to implement employer reputation initiatives is right now. Don't wait. Not many companies are doing this right now. Every time we talk to companies, they are still in a very preliminary process of engagement, of working this process in a more consistent way. They have scattered initiatives going on right now. So once you have the possibility to start working this in a consistent way, in a coordinated way, you'll be probably jumping ahead of the competition. This is probably the best thing that you could be doing right now. So time is right, time is now. Something that we have shown today, more and more CEOs perceive employer reputation initiatives as strategic corporate priority than HR leads. So if you want to have your voice listened by the top of the organization, probably we should start talking what they are expecting you to talk about, not specifically what the HR heads are looking for. Sometimes HR heads are too concerned about the other elements of the organization. I'm not saying that HR is not focused on engagement. Of course they are. But what I'm trying to do is give you some awareness that probably this is much more a higher concern of the CEO, due to the fact that he is the one or she is the one that is primarily responsible for the cultural change of the organization. So these are the first stakeholders, the first leaders when we talk about any sort of culture change, any sort of cultural adjustments of the organization. So probably this is the best interlocutor, this is the best stakeholder for this type of conversation. Another thing that I guess it's important to mention and to share with you is that roughly 80% of the companies in Latin America are not currently implementing any structured employer reputation initiatives. That's what I was talking to you about right now. So we see lots of big companies, bigger companies, let's say the bigger multinationals and the big organizations with more than 10,000 employees. Yes, they have some initiatives, but none of them have something coordinated as the way that I have mentioned to you, having the 3 or 4 dials, working this in a more, let's say, like a source of information for big data initiatives and things like that. So again, companies that are starting doing this right now will be jumping ahead of the competition, will be much better position than the other companies that are still struggling in how to do this and how can we validate this internally, or how can we process this information internally. So it's a matter of understanding exactly how those elements are combined together. Something that I normally do here, that I like to have a quick parenthesis here. We have never been, as human resources, so close to marketing. So if we put this in our heads and think about it, what are the opportunities that we have? It's like a marketing plan. It's like putting things in a more, let's say, marketing approach. It will help us to be more effective in the way that we are positioning ourselves, the way that we are attracting our talent, the way we're motivating and inspiring the talent we should be focusing on. So this is probably something that is great. About 58% of the companies in Latin America with a defined EVP claim to be facing issues in communicating effectively. So this is another great example I'd like to show with you guys. The companies that are doing something are not that many, and the companies that are doing something are still struggling with the communication. So this is something that I was talking to you about right now. So us in human resources still have very difficult skills. It's very difficult for us to communicate properly what has to be communicated. So that's why I bring back my theory that we have never been closer to marketing as we are right now. So if we can focus on marketing skills, marketing initiatives, marketing tactics to, for example, push all the elements that we see on our value proposition on a more effective way to communicate this. How can we give more visibility to those strengths, to these capabilities of the companies and things that we are working on in a more effective way? This is probably the key to success. And last but not least, something that I normally like to emphasize in groups like the one that we're participating today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us, of course. It's a pleasure to be here sharing you, but something that I guess it's important for you as a major takeaway from today is forget about the war for talent. Here in Latin America, what we're fighting is a war for skills. And we see no show of this retreating. So when we look at the competition, those elements that we'll show you in the beginning of our presentation, the beginning of our session today, not everybody is focusing their efforts on obviously the more abundant labor the labor availability, which is the low salary, low qualification, etc. But the key is how can we make sure that those people who are the most demanded are the ones that are being targeted by our initiatives, that are targeted by our everything that we do in the company. So at the end of the day, it's not about having anyone attracting by a company, but how can we attract the right people, attract the right talents, attract the right skills to make sure that we have them engaged, compromised, inspired by our company. And most importantly, something that we normally say as well is it's not about retaining people, but it's about providing them a unique experience that people will be valuing. And when the time comes for these people to leave our organization, they will be leaving and they will be our ambassadors in other companies. So these people will be here, will be talking about us, they'll be promoting us, and we'll make sure that the people who one day will consider applying for a position in our company, they are doing so because they have been listening only good things from our company, from its previous employees. So probably this is one of the major takeaways that we should be having today, and this is part of what we have prepared for you this afternoon. Okay, well, that's pretty much what I have to present to you today. I'm more than happy to answer all your questions. You see my photo and this QR code that if you want to, you can direct, and this is my LinkedIn profile. If you want to get connected, it will be a pleasure to have you. If you have any questions, please feel absolutely free to send me a message or invite me for a connection. Anything that you might require, will be more than happy to to uh, to help you as much as possible. Once again, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of this great initiative. So thank you, everybody from Inspire Workplaces, to have me here.